Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Join us as we dive into the world of endurance sports, exploring everything from nutrition to training and how these elements shape your everyday life, both on and off the race course. Hosted by Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian specializing in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. We're here to share insights and real-world advice to help you thrive on your journey. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome, everyone, to episode 42 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. Today, we're bringing you our next installment of a new series we've put together called the Endurance Athlete Journey Athlete Stories. In this series, we spotlight other athletes and they share their stories with you. Today, we bring you our interview with Jennifer Meister, who is a registered nurse, and she will be talking about her story as a bariatric endurance athlete. We hope you enjoy this episode and that hearing her story will inspire you. We hope you will continue to join us as we bring you stories of real-life athletes just like you sharing their journey. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy episode 42 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is our interview with Jennifer Meister. Today we have a special guest. We've brought on Jennifer Meister, who is a bariatric endurance athlete. And so this is part of our series of the athlete stories. Jennifer is a runner. She's done a couple triathlons, and I'm going to save all the details for her story to let her tell it because she's the one that's better at telling it. But a little introduction to Jennifer. Jennifer was part of the Bariatric Endurance Athlete Facebook group that I created a while back, and so that's how we met. And so we're happy to have Jennifer on the podcast. So Jennifer, that's enough of an introduction. I don't want to take up too much time. I want you to tell your story and have the bulk of the episode. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to do this today.
All right, so let's start. Maybe tell me a bit about your story pre-surgery. So kind of like walk us up to what things were like, prior to you making that decision.
Well, prior to my surgery, just regular life, being a parent and, having kids and struggling with weight, struggling with diet and exercise. Was an on and off exerciser, going to the gym, doing classes, that kind of thing. And part of the reason that I decided to have surgery was my father passed away rather young related to obesity diseases, those comorbid conditions that we often have. And I saw my future and I didn't want to do that at the time. I had a 1-year-old and I wanted to make sure that I saw my kids grow older. So I doubled down on my efforts for exercise and diet, just like we all do. And I found there were a couple people I was working with that were going through the process. And I was like, there's no way you guys qualify for that. And they're like, you'd be very surprised. So I looked into it, I qualified, and I got right on board with it. I was ready. And since then, it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life for me, physically health, my health and my mental health. Yeah.
So you primarily just kind of like worked out, and I would say that you probably just exercised. I mean, were you an athlete in high school or in college or whatever? So tell me a little bit about your endurance background pre-surgery, if there was one.
There was not one, not at all. I would go to the gym and do classes. What I did before surgery and immediately following surgery, before I started racing, was I went to Orange Theory Fitness. That was the thing I did, and I loved it. And so that's what I did. They had a little thing called a dry try, and I tried those when I was doing that. That was a lot of fun. And I, had always wanted to be a runner. I thought that was super fascinating. The people that could do the marathons, it just blew my mind how anyone could do that. So it was always there in the back of my mind, something that I wished that I could do, but I had never done any of that. I did not grow up being an athlete at all. I played no sports in school whatsoever. I avoided running. I avoided the physical activity as much as I could.
Okay. So you went through the process were you pretty set that you were going to have the surgery, or were you more like, I'm going to kind of go through this process, see what it's about? Or were you like, I'm if I qualify, I'm definitely doing it.
As soon as I found out that I qualified, I was 100% in. I was ready. It was time to do something. It was time to be able to make the changes because after my father passed, like I said, I doubled down. I was doing Orange Theory Fitness multiple times a week. I was doing Weight Watchers, cutting carbs, all the things that you do. And I lost 5 pounds in that year, 5 whole pounds. That was it. And I worked hard. And it was very frustrating. And I needed that tool. I needed that additional help. And I was I was just like, this is it. I qualify. I'm doing this. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Had you worked I mean, you're a nurse. Had you ever worked prior to that with anybody who'd had or you worked with other people that you knew, but had you
Mhm.
ever worked with people who'd had the surgery otherwise, or did you know anyone else who'd had the
I
surgery?
I think in my personal life, I knew one person who had had
Okay.
a Roux-en-Y. And then what I did in the bedside had out. No, I didn't
Mhm.
work with people that had had surgery at all.
Mhm.
I was more of a trauma kind of situation. What I did
Okay.
with
Yeah.
patients. So
Makes sense. And when you went in, did they kind of recommend the sleeve versus the Roux-en-Y, or was there a reason you kind of chose one over the other? I'm curious.
because as a nurse, I felt I knew more than the doctor at the time, which I did not. They did recommend a Roux-en-Y because I have GERD. Um, but I was like, no, I think I need the sleeve, which is what he's like, yeah, you can do that. So we did. I do still suffer with GERD. I do have trouble with it. Now that I know more than I did at the time, I wish I had made that decision
Mhm.
to have the Roux-en-Y. I chose sleeve just because of the absorption thing. It's kind of scary for a lot of people,
Right.
the malabsorption, and it was
Yeah.
really scary for me. Again, I know much more now and wish I had done that.
Okay.
You
And
mentioned
then, okay, go ahead.
GERD. That's something that I've never heard. I've never heard of before. What is that?
Yeah. Gastroesophageal reflux disease. So really, really
Ah,
bad heartburn, like a
okay.
chronic heartburn problem. Yeah.
Do you have to you take medicine for that now? Like, does that,
Yes. I
yeah,
did
yeah,
before and I still do. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
there's usually sometimes foods that exacerbate it. Has that gotten like worse, or like is that something that's the same?
I still eat some things that would upset. I still have coffee. I'm not going to lie. I still eat mildly spicy things because really spicy things don't work. But oops. But avoiding some of those triggers does help. But I do have to take medicine more often than I did prior.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So, okay, so let's go through. So you have the surgery. Can you kind of go through like your experience with that, like with the before a little bit we've talked about, but like the surgery, and then I'd love to hear what was your experience afterwards? How did you navigate that? Was it challenge? Was there challenges? Anything you think you would want to share that would be helpful for other people too?
Sure. Initially, after surgery, my biggest challenge was the fluids that people always have trouble with. And proteins a little bit because some of the things just don't, they taste terrible. Like the protein shakes
Oh
or
yeah.
like you get those little protein shots. You try everything, you try it all.
Yes. Yeah,
And
the
it's,
premier protein or I don't know.
well, yes, that. And there was these little shot things that I bought because I bought everything, like anything that they had to sell that I might be able to get in that was less than drinking an entire shake, I would try it. Like I tried so many different things just to be able to not feel sick and get the protein in. So I did have a lot of trouble with those proteins in the beginning and just
Okay.
getting fluids in. A lot of people have that trouble. And it was very common.
Mhm.
It's very common. And I definitely had trouble with that. I did have to get fluids one time after surgery.
Oh, okay, like IV fluids.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did have to get that once because I just couldn't do it. I also had a hernia repair whenever I had my sleeve, so that sometimes makes it a little tighter for people too. So those were like my initial struggles. Once you start eating food, you start having I think of it as a mourning of that relationship that you had with food.
Yeah.
I would
Mm.
sometimes sit there with my tiny little 1 ounce container. That's what I did. I had my little container, my little baby spoons, and I would take however many bites I could take, and then I would cry because I couldn't take another bite. So there was some of that kind of struggle as well.
Mhm.
Because I don't think we really think about what our relationship with food is
So
and
true.
how important it is to us.
Yeah, I think
And then
that's
when
the
you
thing that's been brought up a few times in our stories is
Yeah.
even when we talked to Chris, it was that, yeah, there's that piece. And I don't know. I wish kind of both of you maybe could answer this because I'm not sure. It seems to me that that's not really addressed very well in the like pre-surgery, like, or maybe it was like that psychological piece. That was always my complaint about like when people were coming in for surgeries where I worked, I was always discussing that with them and it seemed like inadequate. And I'm not a psychologist, so I oftentimes feel a little bit unequipped sometimes. I mean, I can help a little bit, but I'm just curious if that,
I do think that that
something you
portion is inadequate in the industry. I
Mhm.
think that you do not get the support psychologically that you need. Nobody talks about you mourn the food. You mourn that
Yeah.
relationship that you have with the food. Nobody talks about that. And I've seen it with other people. Like I've had that conversation with other bariatric patients and it's such a big part of that adjustment after surgery because if you don't deal with it and you don't go through that, then you can never really move on to the next phase because then you're just stuck trying to find a way to get extra food in rather
Mhm.
than learning how to be like, this is new and that's gone. Um,
Right.
one one of my friends at the time when I had my surgery, she said, I think of it as you have to break up with the food. Like it's a bad relationship and you have to say it's you, not me, and they have to go. And so I tried to think of it that way a little bit, that it was just something that I had to learn how to break up with because it wasn't good for me. It wasn't fueling my body. It wasn't doing the things for my body that I needed. And I was not physically well because of that.
Mhm.
Jennifer,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so
an
glad
interesting
that you
point.
brought this up
Yeah.
because I mean, we had different procedures. So you had the sleeve,
Mhm.
I had the bypass. So it's
Yeah.
there are those differences, but I completely wholeheartedly agree with you 100%. Nobody ever talked to me about
Mhm.
the emotional side of it. And I know that I talked about it in another episode where nobody even talked about the hormonal side, where you
Yeah.
had just for the malabsorbed. I'm kind of curious if you had that kind of situation with the sleeve. I assume that you probably did because it's not the type of surgery that we had that would impact the hormones. It's the fact that we
Mhm.
lost weight at such a rapid rate that can cause like these hormone imbalances. But I never did talk about, the emotional side and the relationship with food. And I'm so glad that you did this because I can say I am now probably like 15 years post-op, and
Mhm.
I still struggle with this to this day. I remember one
Yeah.
day when I had just had my surgery and I was actually still sitting on the couch recovering from my surgery. And I was on the liquid diet, probably like you were as well. And my wife at the time was in the kitchen cooking breakfast sausage, and I literally burst into tears because it was such a huge trigger, and it made
Mhm.
me tell myself, Mike, what did I just do to myself?
Mhm.
And nobody ever talked to me about that. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up because, it's definitely a situation that we all have to deal with and then figure out as well on how to manage that going forward. Otherwise, you're going to be like me, 10 to 15 years later, and you're still trying to figure out your relationship with food. I don't still have like a lot of the same restrictions that I had post surgery, but the emotional and mental side is still there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder
There's
if it's how is it that easy to just let go though? It's hard because I love what you said, Jennifer, just it's like a really bad relationship. You've got to break up, but sometimes that's easier said than done, even in
Yes.
especially a
it is.
relationship that you've had for how many years? Like years, right? So it's definitely hard for sure, I would think. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I don't still deal with some of that. There's plenty of times where there's some really great meal, it's a celebration, like whatever it is, and I'm like, God, I just wish I could eat more of this. I still have these thoughts. I just wish I could have more. But I know that I can't because I'd feel awful if I do. So, I mean, I still struggle with some of that. Nowhere near what I did right after surgery, and no one talked to me about the hormonal changes that happened. So some of that could have been fueled by the
Yeah.
hormonal, for sure. It could have been completely fueled by that. I I also had what's called PCOS, but it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's a metabolic issue, and your hormones are not normal for you. And so as I was losing weight, there was those hormonal changes as well that were happening.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that was part of the fuel for that. Not only the change in that relationship, but the hormonal side that, nobody talked about at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's interesting, the PCOS
Mhm.
part of that too, because and I'm curious, did that improve any of the
Mhm.
PCOS
Yeah,
eventually down the road?
yes,
Yeah.
everything. I'm completely back to normal. Um, really within a couple months because I lost the majority of my weight in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like it didn't take that whole, they say you can lose weight for a year and a half. I was pretty much done at about 6 months.
Right. Okay. Wow. So pretty rapid, like a
It was
really
very rapid.
rapid. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have any other follow-up questions from that? Or I want to hear more about what like how did you end up, getting into running, having not been an athlete? That's always curious to me. What made you want to be an athlete at this point?
Well, in my adult life, I had worked out, like I said, and I enjoyed it. It made me feel good. So it was something that I enjoyed. And then when I was working around other athletes, they were endurance athletes. I was completely fascinated with them. I was like, how can you run for 26 miles? I don't understand this. I was like, I'll do a 5K. I could barely walk a 5K. It was hard. And I would try and run and it just physically hurt so much that just it didn't work. So after surgery, I was doing that Orange Theory Fitness and I moved from where I had surgery. We moved about 6 months after that. We moved out of state. And once I moved, I started the running in those classes because again, I always wanted to run. And I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity. They tell you what to do, you just do it, you can run. So I would do that and they have, these little dry tries where you run and you use the rower and you do floor exercises. So I did that. But in the spring after we had moved here, I decided to do a 5K. And I was like, I'm going to do this 5K. And I ran the whole thing. I didn't
Oh.
walk. I was so excited. It was to this day, it's my true PR is that first race I did in 2019. By 2020, I had signed up for the half marathon that is done locally where I live. It got canceled and I trained by myself
All
poorly,
right.
but I trained by myself. It got canceled due to COVID. It got changed to a virtual. I did it all alone. I did the whole half marathon. I did it. And then I had through that and kind of learning about other races locally, I found that there was a training group for that marathon. So I signed up for that at the end of 2020. And ever since then, this year I'm going to be a volunteer for that group and I'm leading a pace group. So I'm actually for the first time being able to give back to the same program that has helped me be able to be this endurance runner. But I went and I did that group and I've done it every year. And then I did my first marathon in 2022. So between 2019, it ramped up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
2019 to
That's pretty
2022,
quick.
I did my first marathon.
What was your first marathon? Like which one?
Honolulu.
Wow.
That
If you're
sounds
going to
like a nice
do it, right?
like do it. Like
Uh,
were you like I'm going to make this into a vacation also? Like
We
that's like
did. I have a friend who is a great inspiration. She's 72 and she probably runs a half marathon every 2 weeks or more. She just finished her 100th half marathon. She's been doing them for 10 years. Amazing. And she said, I want to go do this race on Honolulu. Do you want to go? Sure, I'll
Yeah.
go. There's no time limit for this race. They keep the race open until the last person crosses the finish line. Is it 17 hours? Is it 20 hours? They keep it open. So I was like, okay, no pressure. I can do that. Um,
yeah, that's nice. Yeah, there is no time. Well, you can if it takes you that long, you can still finish. I like that.
so that was my first one. That
Yeah.
was the
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was back in
2022.
2022. Okay. So that was a pretty quick and it's great that like 2020 didn't like that whole pandemic thing didn't slow you down. You're like, I'm still going, I'm still gonna do it. So
Yes,
many people I think stopped.
they did. They stopped. And I was like, absolutely not. My neighbor gave me her treadmill. She didn't want it. And I was like, roll it on over here. I used that. My kids would go out and ride their bikes. I would run multiple times a day because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So that's when it really, I started doing more and more during COVID because I didn't want to sit in the house and I didn't want to regain the weight by not
Yeah.
going to the gym
Mhm.
and not exercising. So that was my driving factor at that time. I mean, it still is somewhat, but I wasn't going back because the gyms were closed. I wasn't going to stop what I had already gained.
Right. Did you feel like that's kind of was that like the Orange Theory and then kind of getting into the running and the 5K? Was that kind of the driving things that was motivating you, knowing, okay, I need to exercise so I don't gain, or what was the line life?
Yeah,
And then you
why
were
Orange
inspired.
Theory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. Or just why in general, like why, getting into that and then kind of the running, was it because you were so inspired by the people you saw? You were like, I really want to be a runner and you were kind of envisioning that you could be that someday, or what? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious. Is there's like a driving force there that motivated
Yes,
you?
I mean, part of it is the exercising is to not regain weight. So I enjoyed Orange Theory a lot because, when I had worked out through my adult life, working with trainers was always really exciting. I really felt like I got results when I did that. And so this was not working with a trainer, but still doing a lot of the same type of things. And it made me feel good. It made me feel strong. It made me feel like I had worked out. I had done a high intensity workout. So there's that, diet culture where you have to do the high intensity workout to make it worth anything. So there was some of that driving the Orange Theory, but I did enjoy it. And it definitely helps with my mental health. It helps bring down the anxiety and bring down a lot of that because it just calms everything, just the physical activity. When it came to in the 5K, again, I had always wanted to be one of those people that could run. And that was just the first step. And I'm like, well, if I did that, I can do more and I can do more and I can do more. And it truly became that. Now, when the gyms closed and it was COVID, I was like, I will not be going back to that. I will not have that regain. I won't go through that. And I didn't. And that feel like I was still able to meet the goals and stay ahead of any kind of problems post-op by not exercising. And then when I started to be able doing races, starting to add on the races, that's when that happened. Was I just started doing races after that instead of going back to the gym.
Okay, so you're like, I'm gonna transit because you got kind of hooked on the races, and there is something I think they're a lifelong runner myself.
Mhm.
When someone starts running and they get into it, you finish a race. There's just something that you want to do more. It motivates you to want to finish more. Plus,
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a running group you're part of, but
Yeah.
sometimes you join other people, and it's even more of that sort of group mentality or that having that support. So I can see why that keeps you going. Any thoughts, Justin, there?
There's definitely a bit of an addiction, I think, when it
Yeah,
comes to
maybe that's
the
it.
endurance. It's like once you get a taste of it, you're just like, that was good. I want another. So I remember after I did Ironman Chattanooga, I said, that was so incredibly painful. I'm never doing another Ironman. I checked it off the list. I'm done. And then, like
Mhm.
2 weeks later, I was scrolling through the Ironman website looking for the next one. So, we always say it's like, oh, I don't want to do that ever again. And then all of a sudden, yeah, it's hyperbole. But
Mhm.
I think it's
I don't know
interesting
what
that you went
is
right from the
interesting.
5K into the half marathon. You completely skipped the whole 10K process, and you're just like, well,
Yeah.
if I'm doing this, I'm doing it. So let's roll on. So I thought that was pretty funny.
And how many marathons have you did that Honolulu, and then how many have you done
I
since?
did Chicago last year, so I've done
Okay,
2, and then I have Big Sur scheduled for next year.
Big Sur. Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll be your third Big Sur. Oh, cool. And Chicago last year,
Yeah, I did Chicago
was
last
it?
year.
How do you like that race? Is it?
It was really great. It was really great. So after Honolulu, I was like, I will never do this again.
Yep, there it is.
I really did. And then there was a bunch of people that were locally in the running community here that were like, I'm going to put in for the lottery for Chicago. I'm like, it's a lottery. Who's going to win a lottery? Well, I did. And I got into Chicago. And so then I had to train for it. I was like,
That's-
this is really cool.
yeah.
It was an amazing race. It's really well supported. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm really glad that I did it. And, I'm towards the end of it, I was like, I want to get better at this. So that was something at the end. And I knew I would do another one, but I also knew I needed to take a year off from that
Mhm.
level of training because it takes a lot of time.
It does.
It does. So that's why there's one next year. So it's every other year now. That's kind of my
That's a
plan.
good that's a good cadence. I've been
Yeah.
on this like roll trying to get a couple 2, 3 in a year. But that'll I'm sure slow down at some point. I'm just finding my biological clock ticking.
Oh.
That's my I'm like, I don't have like forever to run like a speedy one. So I'm gonna keep trying till but I like that cadence of every other year because the marathon does take a lot out of you, I think, personally. So I'm gonna kind of switch gears a little bit. I'm curious, like just with the fueling piece as a dietitian.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's something I'm curious. I'm first of all curious, like and I don't want to sort of have like a leading question here, but I'm curious, like because you have the bariatric guidelines and you're mentioning, okay, the protein, the fluids. There's all these things that you're supposed to do post surgery to keep the weight off and lose the weight. When you started running, like what were you experiencing there? Was there any challenges you had with trying to run and follow those guidelines? Anything, I'm just curious how you manage that because obviously now having run, you're having your third marathon coming up, you probably had to figure out some of the nutrition piece. So, yeah, just curious.
I still struggle with fueling in a race. I've gotten some, I don't know if it's the best advice. I did meet with a dietitian at one point because I'll be honest, I did have a portion of a little bit of regain of weight and I needed to refocus things. I did re-lose it, but I was talking to that dietitian about I'm a runner. I need to be able to fuel the runs. Eating the way that I'm supposed to as a bariatric patient does not give me the energy I need to run. It just doesn't. And I said, so I need to have carbs. She told me to eat Rice Krispie treats, which are
Oh my
tasty,
God.
but not helpful,
No.
right?
It's an interesting specific thing.
It was a very specific thing. And I was like, okay. It was just very weird. I mean, I've
Interesting, that
tried
is.
different things for fueling. One training season, the Honolulu season, I used payday candy bars because
Yep.
that's what I could tolerate. I couldn't do any of the gels. I just couldn't do it. And now I can't stand those things. I used I have tried dates and peanut butter. I've tried sweet potatoes. That made me feel like it just got stuck. So
Yeah.
that didn't work.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
tried to do baby food, but at the high volume, low carb. So that doesn't really work. For me, I've tried different gels. Uma works okay for me, but I'm tired of it now because I did that all of the Chicago training season. So I'm at a place now where I'm trying to figure out again
Yeah.
what to use.
It's gonna work. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you might, somewhere along the line, you were like, okay, in order to fuel properly, I'm going to have to sort
I
of
have to
break a
eat
little
carbs.
bit. Like
I'll have
but
to.
but it seems like, well, maybe because you're also a nurse, so there's that piece of like, okay, you sort of understand some of that, maybe the physiological side of it with the running and needing the carbs for fuel more than maybe other people. I was just curious if you'd had any struggles with that and the fact that, that whole relationship with food piece and the fear of weight gain. I think when I'm working with people, a lot of times I kind of get that, where they're like, hey, I'm really like fearful, I'm fearful of eating more of these carbs and I'm fearful of the weight gain. And, so I do run into that a lot. I was just curious and maybe even outside of just fueling for the runs, are you tending to eat more carb around the workouts? Like, do you think about that? Like,
I do.
yeah, curious.
Before I run or I do any physical activity, I eat graham crackers. They're easy for me to digest. They're not high sweet. That works for me. And it's also something I haven't gotten tired of. So I do that. I have like 3 or 4 of the half squares, something like that. And that usually gets me through a workout, like a short workout, like an hour. But I do before a long run. But if I'm on a long run, then I have to fuel in the middle or, throughout. So that is where I struggle, is finding the
Right.
thing that isn't too sweet, doesn't make me feel sick, doesn't feel stuck. So it doesn't make me have, GI distress for days afterwards. I've had that happen. So that's where my biggest struggle, I think, is in fueling. I am not afraid to eat a carb because I know it's necessary for me to be able to do what I want, which is run. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
make sure that there's carbs with each meal that I eat. But like I said, I try and make it a balanced meal so that it is not just protein heavy because that's not going to fuel the run. That's going to make me tired. That's not going to
Right.
give me the energy. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Yeah,
thinking too, I'm like, now my brain is thinking like, what could you try for the,
right.
yeah, I don't know if it could be like a recommendation episode, but there are, sometimes, I get thinking, what would you be able to try, that I could recommend. But anyways,
Yeah.
you had a thought, Justin.
Yeah, so since the sleeve is didn't alter your digestive system, if I got that right,
Mhm.
you don't have the same kind of difficulties in terms of like the intake of sugar like somebody who had Roux-en-Y. So I'm kind of curious because you said that,
Is that true
I don't
though?
know
I
if
don't
it's
know. Like,
well, I guess that's the question is like, is that
yeah.
true? And is it more of like like you just get tired of the same like sugary taste, and so you get like this palate fatigue? Or is there like a processing that you are having trouble with the foods that you're taking in during the training? So curious if you talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So dumping syndrome, I think, is what you're referring to.
Yes.
People with sleeve can still get it. I have got
Oh,
it.
okay.
Super sweet things make me super sick. Fried foods don't
Mhm.
sit well. I feel really sick. So I have to be very careful with that. And so some of the gels are just too sweet. And then other times it is fatigue. Like Huma is pretty good. It's not super sweet. It sits well in my stomach. It doesn't make me feel sick at all, but I'm kind of tired of it, is kind of the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's if that's the only thing you're taking in, maybe
For an
trying to
entire training
alternate. Yeah.
cycle. Yes.
It's like sometimes the best way to go about it is trying to find 2 or 3 things that you like, that you tolerate, and alternate them a little bit, whether it's like, some kind of gummies, or, but, you might not be able to take a load of it all at once. Or I think, Justin, you've tried UCAN. I know that works for me, but I haven't had.
Yeah,
I like that
that's
it's not so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I've got
very-
like four boxes of them in my training cabinet over there. So that seems to be kind of like my go-to gel, because I went with like the Cliff Bar gels when I first started in triathlon, and they're super thick, and I couldn't take them down because I would have to drink so much fluid after them. And the stuff is just sticky and it just gets everywhere, and it was really annoying. And so I completely abandoned gels for a really long time. And then I had received a recommendation, I think, from somebody in the bariatric group that we're in. Somebody mentioned UCAN. I had never heard of them before. And so I was like, you know what?
And we're not sponsored by them.
No, we're not. I am not a sponsored athlete. We don't get any money from
Not
UCAN,
either.
but it is a product that
No.
I have been using personally.
Just put
And
that
so,
out there.
it seems to be really working well for me. The consistency is thin enough to where I can get it down. I wish they would find a way to get it into a smaller package, because the package
it is
is
a big package.
massive. And so if you can figure out how to get a smaller package, I would really appreciate it.
If you're listening.
Yeah.
If you're listening. But yeah, that seems to be the
And then-
product that is working well in this training block
I use
for
that.
me.
I use that. I like, because it's a slow to digest, more of a starch. I alternate UCAN in, and I use maple syrup, which is very sweet. So I'm not sure I would recommend that, but I like then that's a very fast burning. But I also grew up in Vermont, so I have a love for maple syrup. And I don't seem to ever get sick of it. So, but something like that, where maybe you're taking in that and then a few gummies, so you're almost taking in different carb sources and different avenues of digesting those carbs, maybe even a liquid, like one of the like Scratch or some other like Tailwind. There's lots of them out there. I don't have a preference. And maybe but I think sometimes it has to be like a little more often in a smaller amounts. And that's, I think, the harder part is it's not always going to be able to fuel exactly like somebody who hasn't had the surgery, but just something to think about trying some.
Sometimes
again,
it's a texture thing. So it's like, the way that it feels in your mouth. So the process of actually chewing, it
That's
can
hard to do.
change your mindset completely in the way that it kind of like
You
hits
mean
your
you
stomach.
like
It just
chewing? Oh, I don't.
makes it feel different. So, I'll switch from, I do, my liquid bottles, and then I'll take some gels, and then I've got like honey stinger waffles that I cut up into little quarters. And I think it's just the transition of the gel to the waffle. It's just the texture is completely different, the way that it hits my mouth, and it's changing it
Makes
up
it
like that.
less
It
boring.
works for
Like,
me.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Finding and I've even brought food, fruit leather things. I mean, I've it's just hard when you're doing something fast, when you're training for a marathon and you're actually going to take anything that you have to chew. For me is harder, but it just depends on. Yeah, anyways, those are just some, not that we're trying to fix your issues here, but those are just things that
Those are some good ideas.
Yeah.
I have tried UCAN, but it's kind of it feels gritty.
Yeah, it has it's starchy. It's
Okay,
and when you
I can see
when you
that.
take it, and if it gets, I've noticed if it gets on my clothing, it's kind of got this starchy white, almost like I dropped flour down my shirt or something. So
Yeah, because it uses cornstarch, right?
I think it's I think it's like a maize, like a most resistant starch that they use. But
I should try it again.
yeah, it's took me a couple tries. At first I was like, this is a weird taste, but then it wasn't so sweet. And I had to try a few. I think it was the mango orange or something that I ended up liking. Yes.
Okay. That's a
the
good
other
one.
the raspberry one or whatever strawberry.
Mango,
Banana or something.
mango and pineapple. Mango and pineapple
those
are
are
my two flavors.
Yes.
I don't like anything
Okay.
chocolate. I don't like anything like salted caramel. That stuff does not sit well during an activity like that. So
I like the espresso love.
Yeah.
They'll take that. That's the one I will do sometimes, and it's just that has to be at a specific time. But yeah, it's funny how everybody's different. I think if you take the same exact flavor plus the same exact thing over and over again, and for months on end, you're gonna hate it at the time you get to the marathon.
Yeah.
So sometimes just switching it up even during the run can be helpful, and then you're getting different types of fuel at different times, and then you're kind of capitalizing on the ability for the body to actually absorb that, because we only can absorb so much glucose versus fructose versus and then the super starch takes a little bit longer. I know Chris mentioned using the Morton with both Morton gels. I'm not sure if I'm saying that entirely correct, but it's very expensive. That's the only downside, and that they have it doesn't have a flavor. It's kind of sort of sweet, but not really.
Yeah,
and
you gotta chew them. They're
it's like super thick.
Yeah,
they're weird.
Yeah.
Almost like tapioca ball. I'm like, were these? Is that what my experience? I don't know. I was like, I thought it had little balls in it or something. It was weird, little
It's really weird. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird. I feel like it's another one I have to give it another shot, because sometimes when I first try things, I'm like, this isn't working. And but that's another one that kind of has that technology. It's supposed to kind of be more it goes into the gut, but it doesn't attract the fluid so much into the gut that might cause some of the GI issues. Some thoughts there. I'm trying to think of other products. I don't know. There's so many out there. It's a problem.
There are.
Yeah. So one
So
thing
many-
that I wanted to touch on, because we've done a podcast before on this topic. So you said that you're basically year on, year off for marathons. So you're doing one every other year. What do you do on two questions? What do you do on the off years where you're not doing a marathon? And I guess I kind of want you to talk about what led you to that decision, other than just the whole was it just the training load? Or I know that you have a couple kids and they're young or younger, and I assume that they're probably pretty active. So was it just that was a life choice that you made? Because of the demands of the training. So talk a little bit about how you made that decision on how to proceed like that.
Yeah. So after the first marathon, when I wasn't going to do any anymore ever, I just did my regular half marathons through that year. I think that was the first year I did a sprint triathlon and a super sprint back to back, Saturday night, Sunday morning. So I trained for that instead. And it didn't take as much time, running those longer miles takes a lot of time away from my family. So I was like, well, I'll just stick with the half marathon and I'll try this triathlon thing. I'll try it out, see if I like it. It was fun. And so that's what I did the first year. And then Chicago came about the next year, we're going to do the lottery. So I did that and I said, well, I guess I'll do one every other year. Why not? And then this year I did the triathlon, but I added another race that weekend. So there were 3 races that weekend, an Olympic, a sprint, and a super sprint. So I did that and I trained for that over the summer. And then half marathons. I do several half marathons in a year.
So you're still doing the halves and 5Ks
so you're
and
still
things in
active.
between.
You're still
Yeah.
going.
And maybe
still
now
doing races are
triathlon.
just shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned maybe someday you're like, we asked about that, and you're
Yeah.
thinking someday you might do like a half Ironman or something, maybe.
Yes, because after I did the trifesta, that's what it's called when you do the 3 races in that
I
weekend at
like
this
that.
local race. I was like, well, it totaled 54.5 miles doing all 3 races, and I was like, well, if I can do that, surely I can add to a 70.3. And
There
then
it is.
that's exactly what I said. If I can do that, I can do this other. And I was like, well, if I don't get into the Big Sur, I'll do a 70.3 this year instead. And I got into Big Sur. So that's future now
You've been
instead.
lucky getting in. The lottery seems to
Yeah.
serve
Yeah.
you.
Awesome.
You haven't had any issues.
I did not get into the New York race
Oh,
in
okay.
their lottery. So I don't know.
New York
So just-
City? Or
yeah,
that
I did
one?
try
Yeah,
that,
one's
but no go there. And that's
that one's
okay.
harder.
Because
Yeah.
that one also, I would probably be starting around noon, and that sounds kind of terrible. I like to be done much earlier in the day if I can be.
Yeah, I guess that
But
makes sense because they have rolling wave starts and yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. You said that you had the thought of the 70.3. I'm just
Uh-huh.
curious, what 70.3 would you consider?
Well, that I did not get that far in
You
the
didn't get
thought
that far.
process
Oh, okay.
at all. No, I didn't get that far in the process because I got into Big Sur. So I was like, well, that's out
So,
for this
yeah,
year
you're
because I
like,
can't do both in a year.
Yeah.
no, that would.
So no, I hadn't really thought about where. I don't know anything about any of the courses. I know nothing. Like I am very green in this area, very, very green. So
Do you have any recommendations? I don't know.
yeah, what are
Justin,
your
I'm like,
I
I've
don't-
only done one, so I don't know.
Man,
When it
so,
was in
you know,
Colorado, high altitude.
like
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go to elevation.
right around where you live.
Mhm. I know there's one in Des Moines, and I
Yeah.
think there's a Nebraska.
I don't know. There's
No,
the ever famous and ever popular Wisconsin. So,
okay.
but that's a challenging one to kind of like take a bite out of for your first. I'd have to do some research, and maybe I can shoot you a list of like the top 5
Okay.
that I would recommend for something
For a
like
first
that.
timer.
Maybe we'll do that, and I'll post it out into the Facebook group.
There you go.
There we go. Join the
Yeah,
Facebook
that's
group, and you'll see the
Somebody
top
might
5
be able to
that I can
convince me to
recommend.
do a half Ironman again. But somebody might be able to convince me eventually. So you're
what-
ready. When is Big Sur? Is that next? What date
April,
is
April 26th.
April. Okay. So you're maybe then the next year. I think I might be
Maybe.
able to get on board with that.
Maybe the next year. We'll see.
I don't know.
Both my kids will be in middle school next year. The older they get, both my younger kids, I have 3, but my younger kids will both be in middle school next year.
Does that make it easier? Or I have one 6-year-old, and it's the challenge. I mean, it's like it's a different. Now he's in kindergarten. It's just a different challenge, but it's harder when they're younger, obviously.
Well, if they're in sports when they're in middle
Yeah.
school and high school, they do things at the school, and then you have a game like during the week. So one of my daughters is in cheer. It's Pee Wee cheer. So she's in practice 2 nights a week and a Saturday game. So that when they're younger, it just cuts into evenings and weekends. But when they're a little bit older and it goes through the school, you have a little bit more free time.
Right, because they're actually doing
Yeah.
it after school. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. You have to be there as much. So you get more time to like run or train, which is
Well, and the older they get, the less they need and want you around. So, which is sad and freeing at the same time. So,
right.
I agree.
a little bittersweet. Yeah.
I so agree with that statement. It's so true. But the
Yeah, I kind
one
of am like
follow-up that
excited and sad for that. Anyway,
yeah, so the
but-
follow-up that I've got for you is that given the age of your kids
Mhm.
and the activities that they're doing
Mhm.
and your own personal goals of half marathons and full marathons and the
Mhm.
such, how do you plan to get it all in? Like what's your approach? Are you training early mornings? Are you training like early evenings and when they're kind of like off doing their thing? So talk a little bit about how you manage your day in order to get everything done.
I'm an early morning exerciser because evenings I'm actually involved with my daughter in cheer. So I'm busy with her. So my evenings are very much taken. And so I wake up very early and I usually start my workout around 5 a.m. and then work my full day, do the evening activities whether I'm at home or with, having an activity with the kids, and then do it over the next day.
Right,
Yeah,
busy.
so yes.
And that's 5 days a week, or do you work like 5 days?
I work 5
or
days a week. I do work 5 days a week, and then Saturday's long run day. So I'm up early doing that. I ran at 5 this morning as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
so because we had to get ready for our games today. So,
So you had to get up, run, train,
Mhm.
and then get going. Yeah. How do you with your meals? I'm curious. Do you plan ahead, prep? How are you managing fueling and eating around that schedule? Which is, I think, a common struggle for people.
Yeah.
So just in
Yeah.
general, yeah.
I don't know if this is good or bad, but I eat this pretty much the same thing for lunch and breakfast every day.
Preach,
Every
sister.
day. So that's what I do.
It
And
makes
then
it easy, right?
evenings,
Yeah.
it's just I make my meal. That's it. They take care of their lunches and they feed themselves breakfast. And then I make a dinner. I don't do as much meal planning as I need to, but that's just time constraints really on my part. But, it's a balanced meal that we eat vegetable, carbohydrate, meat. So I make sure that that is part of our meal every night, whether I plan it at 5 p.m. or whether I've thought about it the day before. But yeah, I eat the same thing every morning and for lunch. And snacks can vary. I drink the same, I have the same coffees at the same time. Sometimes I have a protein shake. Sometimes I have electrolytes in the afternoon. Kind of depends on if I'm feeling like I haven't been getting enough protein with my evening meals or, what.
Mm-hmm. Pretty regimented. You have a very routine thing.
And it wasn't always that way. I think it's been in the last couple years. Yeah, since that that I started eating the same thing for lunch and breakfast. They don't make me feel bad. They make me, I have an expected amount of time that it makes me feel full, and it helps meet what I need in the day. So that's why I do it that way.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. But you're thinking, I think that's a lot of people are I don't want to have the same thing.
I
That,
was that
and
way.
I'm like, well, if you're that busy, that might be it's going to be hard to make it different every day. Sometimes you have to kind of, maybe you can change it up a little bit, but it's hard to not do that when you're so busy with so many things like you are.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because it makes it much easier. Because if
Mhm.
you rotate things maybe a little bit week to week, but yeah, makes sense. But you're obviously kind of have a routine there, which is helpful. I was also going to ask you a little bit, going back, just you had mentioned this is just something too that Chris had mentioned, and I was just curious about. You kind of mentioned the running ending as it relates to anxiety and kind of managing that. And I'm assuming that's kind of another big motivation for why you're continuing to, participate because that's a big one for me personally is just it's I know if I don't, sometimes I don't feel like going out and running. I'm pretty motivated, but it's I know if I don't, I'm going to be not my best version of myself. And my anxiety is going to be bad. Is that kind of true for you? I mean, I just know you said something about it and I was just wanting to dig in a little more with that and see what how you're, if that's something you're feeling like the running is helping you kind of more into that. Yeah.
Yes, physical activity is, in my opinion, the most underused medication for mental health, period. For me, helps me not get as angry as easily. It helps me not get worked up about things that sometimes I do. If I have too many days where I can't make it out, it's usually not good. I'm in tears more often. I'm, frustrated with small things. It just helps me not be as bothered by everything out there. So I think that's a level of anxiety, a level of perhaps some depression, but it helps balance me so that I am more effective.
Right. That's how I
Yeah.
kind of feel as well. It's almost like I get my run in and it's hard. It's like I can I've accomplished this thing.
Yes.
That was a little bit challenging. I had to get up and do it. I had to put the effort in and now I can conquer the day effectively. And think,
Mhm.
yeah, it's exactly,
Oh gosh. And
this
if
is
I put my
case.
workout off till the evening, the whole day would be shot. Poor
Oh,
everyone I
yeah.
have to talk to all day.
Plus, I'd be thinking about it all day, oh, I got to do that workout because I've done doubles before, and that's also hard
Mhm.
where I've done it, broken things up into
Yeah.
the morning and then another in the evening. You have to do that a lot for triathlon, Ironman training too, and yeah, that's hard sometimes. You're I still have this other workout. I kind of like being
Mhm.
done. I'm okay, I can conquer
Check.
the
It's
check. I
done.
got it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Now I'm off to my day, but yeah, I just, I think that's kind of a so far a theme that I've kind of noticed with a few of the people we've talked to. And yeah, I don't know, Justin, if you feel the same or have similar thoughts.
I'm just being reassured that I'm not the only one out there that feels
You're
that
not the
way.
only
So
one. That's great.
I'm just happy now.
You're
I
like,
like the
what
way
do
that you
people do?
said balance. I love that word, and I think it's an accurate
Feel
description
balanced.
on it just balances me. And
Mhm.
so I love that characterization. So one
Mhm.
question that I do have for you is that if you could look back pre-surgery and then
Mhm.
post-surgery, how do you feel the lives of those around you have been affected by that surgery and now the new kind of Jennifer versus the old Jennifer?
I can do more things with my kids.
Love it.
Like, I'm not sitting on the couch because I'm too tired to get up and do anything. They don't want to do the things I want to do now. Like, I'm the one that's like, let's go do this. Let's go ride bikes. Let's go do. No, they don't want to do it. But before, I couldn't go up the stairs at the house without being out of breath, or we couldn't go for a hike because my knee hurt too bad to go. And, they do those things with me sometimes, just not as much as I would prefer to do
Yeah.
them. But, being able to be that physically active parent where I know I didn't see that as a kid. I didn't see my parents enjoy being outdoors, taking a hike, taking a walk, riding a bike, any of those things. So I think that gives them a different perspective that there is more than work, home, cleaning, chores, errands. It's like there's an outside world out there that maybe I think, I didn't experience that growing up, but I'm glad that I'm able to give that to them.
And you're setting like a role model. You're like being a role model for them. I think, I think of that too
Yeah.
with my son is like, he's watching me. And they're
Mhm.
very observant. Kids are like
Mhm.
that's something
Yeah.
I'm learning and so setting that, sometimes I feel guilty going out for my run, but I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? Like I'm going to be a better mom for it. And he's seen me like go out and keep working at this and I'm not spending my whole day running, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to
Mhm.
get this in so I can be a better mom and be that role model for him. And so I think
Yeah.
that's important to think
That. And
about
I like
too.
to tell them that nothing worth doing is easy. And I remind them that
Love it.
these races and these things that are my personal goals and things that I want to do, I work hard for them. And it's not easy to do it, but it's worth it to me.
Mhm.
So I try and tell them that. And I try and show them that
Right.
by doing the
Yes.
hard work that they can see. They get up before I get home in the morning most of the time. So I get home 10, 15 minutes after they get up in the morning most of the days. So they're like, "Oh yeah,
You're
mom's out
tugging
running
on my
again."
heartstrings, Jennifer. You're tugging on them, girl. So I mean,
Yeah.
I
Oh.
completely agree with you. And it's just like because when I got into my journey, my kids were younger. It's like I
Mhm.
think my youngest kid was in like elementary school, effectively, and then I mean, my kids are 8 years apart, and so
Mhm.
they grew up. Going to races and they never complained,
Mhm.
the 4 a.m. wake up calls, to go
Mhm.
to the next race, but they grew up watching dad do hard stuff,
Mhm.
and they said and they watched me go through the process, of working for
Mhm.
something. And I think it instilled a work ethic that, is kind of lacking in today's world. And
Mhm.
I love it that you said this. And I think that, the kids are being able to watch mom and dad like do hard stuff and the stuff that it requires effort and that it just doesn't come easy. And so I
Mhm.
love that. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say that to my son. Like, think, what did you say? Like,
Nothing worth doing
nothing
is
worth doing.
easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one to say. I think. Yeah. I have like maybe one last question since we're almost at the hour. But if you were talking with someone who maybe was thinking about, getting the surgery or even like has had the surgery and they want to get into endurance, or even just getting into exercise. I mean, it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be something epic like a triathlon or, an Ironman or a marathon.
Right.
Like what would you have any like words of wisdom, anything you would, tell them,
Sure.
want them to know?
If you want to, I've talked to lots of people that are thinking about surgery or had it. If they are talking about exercise, I'm like, start easy, start where you are and build from there. Decide where you want to go and make that plan to get there. If it's 10 minutes today, it's 10 minutes today, but tomorrow it's 12. Start there. That's what I always say is start where you are and you'll get to where you want to be if you keep
I,
adding on.
I love
Um,
it. That's that's freaking awesome. I
It's
love
just
that.
that, like, none of us have come. I started running when I was very young. Nobody's start, doing the marathon, starts at, and not train for it. I think it
mhm.
takes building on top, like starting doing something and then kind of building and
Mhm.
working, and it's a whole process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. And that's part of I think that's part of the fun of it. Like, that's not where you go, it's the whole journey. Like our
Mhm.
podcast name, but like the whole journey in between. And I
Yeah.
think explaining that to people, like, yeah, you're here, you can do it in like 10 minutes, but if you keep going, and you'll really, once you get where you want to go, you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, that was amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just it's hard when somebody's starting out to kind of explain that or instill that in them. But I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. That was a nice ending. I'm trying to
I
think
don't
if
think
I have
that
any
there's
more questions.
another way that we could possibly end this podcast on a higher note from that piece of advice. That was incredible. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time on a Saturday evening when we know that you're super busy to talk with us and to share your story with us and our listeners. I really appreciate the effort, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
having me. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
It's
All right, so this
been-
wraps up
yes.
the episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. We had our guest with Jennifer Meister, so she was sharing her story with us. There's nothing else that I could say that would wrap this podcast up any better. So, Jennifer, thank you guys for listening to us. We appreciate it that you've tuned in and that you continue to do so. Until next time, I'm your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie. Jennifer, thank you so much. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.
All right, bye.
Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Kate an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.